There is no pain like the pain of seeing our kids suffer. Today, I want to share with you a very personal story about my own son. This is a time in his life that was between the ages of maybe 18 and 21, and he dealt with flashbacks. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced somebody having a flashback, but it's really a unique experience, and it's quite shocking. It's like they're just not there. They're seeing right past you. And if you've ever experienced this, you know what I'm talking about. This was new territory for me. This was real. So it's a time of being disconnected from reality, and he would flash back to some of the traumatic events that had happened to him. And these were events, of course, from his childhood. This would happen. One time it happened while he was mopping the kitchen floor. Another time it was because he heard a couple that was arguing and it triggered a flashback. There was another time it was because his girlfriend was upset and it triggered a flashback. So one evening, I realized that he was having a flashback by the look on his face. Like you just could tell. It was like his eyes were almost glazed over, and like he was there, he was talking, but he wasn't talking to me. It's like he was talking to somebody else in the room. Just really wasn't connected with the current environment. And so I would go, okay, wait, who is he talking to? And his words were, stop, don't do that. And I'm looking around, nobody's doing anything. I thought, what's he talking about? And he went on and said, I'll be good, please stop. I'm sorry. The words "I'm sorry" kept coming out of his mouth. And then he said, no, Dad, don't hurt her. I'm Renee Swanson, your host of the Covert Narcissism podcast. And I will never forget those words out of my son's mouth. No, Dad, don't hurt her. And I'm right there with him, and I was calling to him going, hey, I'm here. And I put my hand on his knee. He had sat down on the couch by now. And I've put my hand on his knee and said, hey, I'm here. I called him by name, but he's looking right past me. He wasn't seeing me, and he just kept saying, I'm sorry. And I was terrified. I'm trying to reach out to him. I'm trying to connect back to him. And this went on for several minutes. And then the look in his eyes changed. He was back. He saw me. He looked straight at me, and his eyes just focused. And it again, if you've been there and seen this, you know what I'm talking about. It's all of a sudden now he saw me, and I said, "Hey," and his words were, "Mom." It's like he was confused that I was there. I said, yeah, I'm here. I'm here. You're safe. I'm here. Well, then a total exhaustion sets in. And it's just like energy is just zapped out of him. And he says, what happened? It's like there's a recognition then by this point. He had enough flashbacks that there was a recognition that he had flashed, at this point. And he commented, he said, I had a flashback. And I said, yes, you did. And so I watched him try to kind of reconnect with reality now. As he settled, I asked him, I said, hey, can I ask you something? And he said, sure. And I said, when you said, Dad, don't hurt her, I said, who is her? Who are you talking about? And he looked me straight in the face and he said, I'm talking about you. I gently responded and I said, hey, you need to know something here. Your dad never laid a hand on me. He never hit me. He never hurt me in that way. And his response was, I know, Mom. I'm not talking about physically. Dad hurt you. And he hurt you in other ways. It was that moment when I truly realized that my son got it. My son understood. My son saw the pain that I had been through, and it wasn't bruises on my face or on my arms, or he saw the emotional bruises. And I didn't realize that he did, but he did. One of the tolls that our children pay is seeing you suffer. People ask, when do I leave? Do I stay? I'm hiding this abuse from my kids. They don't see it. Yeah, they do. And one of the ways that they suffer is when you suffer. You're their mom. You're their dad. You're the parent that makes them feel safe, that makes them feel loved and cared for. They know that they matter to you. And when you suffer, they suffer too. Later, I talked with my son more about this. And he's been very open to talking about all of it, which I'm eternally grateful for. But he said he blamed himself, for a lot of this. He said he used to sit outside our door at night and listen, and I didn't know he was there. He said, "Mom, you thought I was in bed." And I did. I thought this was keeping it protected from him, keeping him protected from this. And he said, I heard a lot of the fights. And he said, some of those fights were about me. And yes, he was part of the topic of some of the conversations or arguments or fights, whatever you want to call them, the circular conversations. There's no doubt that, that was true. And I said, yes, but it wasn't your fault. You were a kid. You're a kid. You're allowed to do kid things. He said, Mom, but some of that was about me. And he said, even the ones that weren't about me, those were my fault too. And I said, wait a minute. How? How is that your fault? And he said, because I had done something that upset him, so he was already in a bad mood, but he took his anger out on you, Mom. He took his anger out on you repeatedly. Well, of course, this broke my heart, but it opened a conversation with my son that has been a conversation of so much healing for both of us. And I talked with him, about how this affects kids. And I've learned so much from him about how this whole journey affects kids. And I'm extremely grateful for that as well. If you think you are hiding this from your kids, you're wrong. You need to think again. Kids aren't stupid. They see it. They know. And they know what's going on. And they deal with it in different ways. They put defense mechanisms in place. Didn't you? You put defense mechanisms in place. What makes you think the child does any differently? They do. It might be denial. They might, pretend like they don't see it. They might, just try to distract themselves with life and go on ignoring it. That doesn't mean they don't see it. They live in your home too. They might clam up. They might shut the world out and disassociate. They might, distract themselves with addictions. They might even start setting hard boundaries. That's where a temper will start coming out, and they flare up with tempers. These are them trying to put boundaries in place, but those boundaries are harsh. They might go into protection mode, protecting you. All of these are defense mechanisms for what's going on in their world. I know it's easy to get consumed with what's going on in our world, but this is what's going on in their world. And we need to face that. We need to see that. How do we help these kids? I've talked before about emotional safety. Giving our kids emotional safety is crucial. Let's talk about what that means. One of the ways to start this process is to make sure we're talking with them in emotional language. So instead of asking, how did your test go today? Ask things like, hey, how did you feel about your test today? Instead of asking, how are you? Ask, how do you feel? Even that little shift will start getting emotional language to be a regular part of your vocabulary. Ask them, when they're telling you a story about something that happened in their life, ask, how did that make you feel? Or, if you're watching a movie or you're talking about a friend of theirs or, how do you think that made them feel? Ask in emotional language. Ask about their feelings. I got an emotional pillow. If you get on Amazon and look up emotional pillow, you'll find it. It's a wheel that's got all these emotions labeled. And I mean, it's got emotions that I haven't thought about in years. It starts with the easy ones in the middle, happy, angry, sad, all of this, but then it branches out to more, detailed, versions of this, where sad is now disappointed or depressed or, overwhelmed. And then it branches out even further into more detailed words to describe your emotions. Teach these words to your kids. Let's talk about emotions, and let's make it safe to talk about emotions. There's no answer that's wrong when you say, how did you feel about your test today? There's not a wrong answer. Validate their feelings. Validate however they feel. There's no judgment here. No trying to talk them out of it. If they say, man, I felt horrible about that test, don't try to talk them out of that. Oh, I'm sure you did fine. I'm sure you did okay. That doesn't validate their feelings. Instead, I'm sorry to hear that. Why do you feel so bad about it? Help me understand. Validate them. Another way to do this is to embrace vulnerability. Live this one by example. We live in this world where everything's got to be perfect. We live on this image. I've got to be the perfect parent. I've got to always know the right words to say. I've got to always have all the answers. No, you don't. Who decided that? There is no perfect. And in fact, trying to be that perfect creates a narcissistic world. Instead, be perfect by embracing your vulnerability. Perfect is with weaknesses. It's with struggles. It's with vulnerability. And live that in front of your kids. Let them see you struggle. Let them see you working through your own issues. No, you don't have to, I'm not saying sit down and have a counseling session with your 5-year-old. Okay? But let them know that you're having a tough time too, that there's struggles that are there. Okay? Let them see that, I'm working on this project and I'm a little overwhelmed by this one. I'm kind of stuck. I'm not sure what to do. Talk to them in language that's age appropriate. When you've got a teenager who's facing life and really struggling with some of the issues they go through as teenagers, let them know that you get it. You've been there too. Now, don't let them know to the point that it all becomes about you, because again, that just feeds the narcissistic mentality. Connect with them. Let them see that you're vulnerable too, and then be there to listen for them. Let them show their vulnerability. Allow them to open up and express their concerns, their frustrations, not so you can be the rescuer. Listen to what I'm saying here. I'm not saying do it so you can look good. Do it so that they can be supported. Do it so they can be loved and they can be cared for and they can know that they matter. Connect with your kids. We want to tell them all about narcissism, okay? When we're co-parenting with a narcissistic parent, we want to tell them all about the narcissism. We want to tell them about the behaviors and the frustrations and the gaslighting and circular conversations. We want them to know so that they're not victims of it, okay? But you can't do that. You can't throw this co-parent, this parent that you're dealing with, under the bus. It doesn't work, okay? You've got to let them see it when they see it. Instead, focus on connecting with them. Do bonding activities. Meet them with where they are. Do what they want to do. Let their life be about them and be that parent that's there to support what they want, not what you want for them. Okay, I spent more time than I care to mention in, Chuck E. Cheese, a pizza arcade, okay, rock climbing, roller skating rinks, playing Wii Sports on the TV, playing with Pokemon cards. This is not how I would have chosen to spend my time as an adult. But that's not what it was about. This was about my kids. I was bonding with them. It wasn't about the activity. It was about the relationship. When my husband would come to me and complain that he didn't have a good relationship with them, and I would say, well, go spend time with them. Take them to Chuck E. Cheese. Oh, I don't want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I want to do something else. We'll do something more, and he would shift it to something he wanted to do. Guess what? That's not what the kids wanted to do. And then he would complain that he didn't have a relationship with them. He didn't invest in their activities. He wanted the time together, but he wanted it to be about what he wanted it to be about, what he wanted to do. Even if it was an activity that they did choose, he still controlled it to make it about how he wanted that activity to go, not them. I remember saying to him one time, "Do you think I want to go spend my time at a roller skating rink? That's not how I would choose my adult life activities. I get that. That's not where I would spend my time. But it's about my kids. I was there for them, and they remember that. And I got out on the roller skating rink with them, and I roller skated with them, and I made it about them. That's why we have the relationship that we do, because they know that they matter to me." So some ideas. Create a bonding jar. So everyone gets to take some paper, little pieces of paper, and write down activities that they want to do. And they put it in this jar. And then when you have some time and you go, okay, we've got this weekend coming. What activity do we want to do? You randomly pull one out, and that's the activity that everybody does. Maybe it's to, go putt-putting, or maybe it's to go roller skating. Maybe it's to go swimming in the neighborhood pool. Maybe it's to sit down and play a board game. It can be different things. And you can even have two different jars. You can have one that's like a daily bonding jar, and then one that's maybe a weekend for the bigger weekend activities. And the daily ones can be more like, a board game or baking cookies, maybe going for a bike ride, even sitting down and playing a video game. I don't mind the video games as long as I'm doing it with my kids. Every day, you can pull one of these out. Get creative. Let your kids get creative. It's a great way to start bonding with them and let them see that everybody's ideas matter. I want to talk, before we close out here, about the protection mode that kids so often go into. They want to protect us. How do we stop that? Them being in a protective mode of you causes them to put all of these defense mechanisms into overdrive, which is very damaging to the child. How do we stop this protection mode for them? Well, my answer to that is make yourself where you don't need protecting. Take care of you. Do the work for you. Do your own work first. And your kids know then, they see that you've got this, that you're on top of this, that you're taking care of you. And they don't need to protect you. They have nothing to protect if you're not broken down and hurt or upset. Now, I'm not saying you don't get broken down, hurt, and upset. You do this. And this kind of contradicts what I said earlier about showing them your vulnerability. They can see that you're vulnerable. They can see that, man, that did really hurt. But these are the things I'm doing to take care of it. These are the things. Let them know that you're doing the work. Let them see it. Don't strive to be perfect. Like I said earlier, this is counterproductive. They can see you working, learning, and growing, and this gives them confidence that you've actually got this. So go through and do the work. Do the work on cognitive dissonance. Do the work on trauma bonding. Do the work on setting up boundaries. Do the work that you hear throughout all of these podcast episodes. Okay? That is crucial. This is a beautiful thing that you can offer to your children, is doing that work on you. Taking away their need to protect you. And I know they don't need to, but they think they do. And you can't take that away from them unless you are standing on your own feet. Be that anchor for them that they need, even if they can't verbalize it yet. I wish you so much peace and your kids on this journey of healing.